Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the comprehensive study. It's also an informal study of Kant's critique of pure reason. Here with Harrison and Patrick. We are picking up today in section 25 of the transcendental deduction. So we're pretty far into it. Going to be completing it soon, within the next few sections or so. Um, this is the part usually where I give context, and we just got through this pretty bullshit section where he speaks nonsense for like roughly half of it. The first half was actually interesting um, because we talked about figurative verse. Or this is probably better to. I understood it better when we did like the Latin or whatever this is. So the
Well, the number one
synthesis
thing is I think he
speciosa.
really kind of clarified what the imagination is a lot more. It's
Yes.
literally what you think it is.
Yep.
Wait, what is it?
What you think it is. Imagination is like imagination.
Like the create, like that which creates.
Well, the faculty for representing an object even without its presence and intuition.
So
Like
you
he defined,
you
he
imagine an
somehow
object,
drops
but
that
it's not actually
definition.
like
Like,
you don't intuit it like physically, or in any other way. You
Okay,
I
just
mean,
so
I kind of
imagine
know.
it.
Wait, so is the faculty from even without its presence? Okay, so it's like the thing of like I can like
It's
I
picture
see the
thinking,
table, but I don't intuit or think about the table.
Well,
You don't.
no,
Well, you
it's
would
like
see it in your mind, like you just like you're
Oh, so
literally
like
imagine
I
Harrison.
something.
picture.
Imagine a lion.
Oh, it's picture thought.
Yes, basically.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Okay.
it's like literally, if I tell you to imagine something, you use your imagination. It's not more complicated than that, which is probably the reason why like he didn't feel the need to define imagination. We assumed it must be some weird Kantian term, but he's using it in a sense that's very, very ordinary. But then it
Um,
becomes mysterious why he thinks we need to use imagination in order to arrive at synthesis.
but
Yeah,
Because
if it's not
what
anything
if I
more
am
than
actually seeing a lion? Why do I
yeah,
need my imagination then?
yeah.
um, don't think he
Not
answers that.
clear, but at least we
Instead of
understand
answering
what
that, he
imagination.
goes on to this shit. But
Yes, this paradox.
he all right. So if you weren't here last time, very brief overview. He gives essentially he says we got confused all the way back in section 6, which if you don't remember, should definitely go back and watch all of these up to this one if you haven't. But in section 6, which is in the transcendental aesthetic, he's talking about the form of inner sense, which is time, as basically a subjective condition of experience, but it's applied to objects and just like all the other subjective conditions are applied to. This is what the transcendental deduction is about. How subjective conditions are applied to our objective experience. But he says we got confused for some reason. He says everyone. There was a paradox that must have struck everyone in the exposition I gave in section 6. So he gives this basically bullshit, and if you want to see why it's bullshit, watch our last one. Basically, it could be the explanation can be boiled down to like Hegel's critique of picture thinking. Kant basically commits picture thinking fallacy in this horrible and confusing explanation. And then he gaslights us. If that's not bad enough, he gaslights us at the end and says, "I do not see how one can find so many difficulties in the fact that inner sense is affected by ourselves." It's this whole thing that he took a bunch of things and made a bunch of
You
wrong
are the one
claims and
who
horrible
found the
arguments.
difficulty.
He's like, actually, I didn't even need to do that. Every active attention is actually just an example of this. So he shouldn't have been confused. When in reality, nobody was confused in the first place about Section 6. Section 6 is quite clear, quite as
Maybe
most of
some people.
yeah. So it's one of the most basic things you can find probably in this book, at least up to this point that we're at here. So
Yeah, I mean, sir, you might have been confused by section 6, but if you were, the rest of the book isn't clearer.
yeah, it's about as clear as we've gotten. There are maybe like a few other instances that you could probably go back in the study and find that maybe are clearer, but that's generally as clear as it gets. And fun fact, actually, to begin the new content and transition to the new content in this video that wasn't the last one, I looked at this footnote, this or end note rather, 43, in my copy of the critique. That is the one that we're using, which is the Paul Geyer an Alan Wood translation. And I looked here, and it said Kant was like concerned till the end of his career about this issue of inner sense, and which is terrible because he literally just talks about it in section 6. Like it's all there. Everything you need to understand is there. And for some reason he made it a point in his like academic career to keep fucking writing about it and to argue for some reason against like Barclay of all people, which is basically what this footnote tells you. So it's really bad, really bad. Not a highlight of his career, and this was not a highlight of this book. This was, I mean, in terms of comedy and in terms of how many times I pressed these funny sound buttons, I guess it was a highlight. But in terms of like philosophical content and like learning good things, that was not a highlight. So so that's where we were, and we're at just section 25, which is unnamed. So to find out what it is, we're gonna have to actually read it. So I'm gonna give a moment for any more preliminary context giving or comments to be made, and if there are none, then I suppose we can begin reading the mysterious section 25.
Let's hope it's better than section 24.
Yeah, good preliminary comment. I agree wholeheartedly. Okay. Does anyone want to begin reading?
Sure, I'll go.
Cool.
In the transcendental synthesis of the manifold of representations in general, on the contrary, hence in the synthetic original unity of apperception, I am conscious of myself not as I appear to myself, nor as I am in myself, but only that I am.
Okay, wait. Can we hold
This-
up real quick? Sorry, I just wanted
Yeah.
to point out something. I think we covered this a lot last time. We kind of discovered what he means because we were confused about the manifold representations in general versus like
The manifold, so the transcendental synthesis versus what was the other one he made?
uh
Let's double back a bit.
yeah, let's
Because I did
um
ultimately understand it. So
yes,
the
and I wanted
figurative versus transcendental.
Oh no no,
Also,
it was hang on, well specifically it was the manifold of sensible intuition versus the manifold in general. Was that it?
Yeah, so the manifold of sensible intuition, which is possible and necessary a
Oh, the manifold of
priori,
intuition in general.
which
Yes.
is called, yeah, so figurative versus as distinct from that which is thought in the category in regard to the manifold of intuition in general, which is called combination of the understanding,
So it's basically
intellectualis. So it's
speciosa versus intellectualis, which I actually was gonna go over but didn't really go
well,
into
yeah,
it.
and it's the word figurative basically. The figurative being um, like you can literally perform a sensible synthesis in imagination, right? You can
like
put together 3 lines in your imagination and make a triangle, and that's a priori. It's possible and necessary a priori, and so it's figurative. But it's different from the general synthesis of the manifold in general, synthesis intellectualis, which I think is supposed to be basically apperception.
Yeah.
would that
Okay.
be the transcendental synthesis?
Yes.
Both are transcendental.
But
They're both and just to clarify, by transcendental, it's that which we're not figuratively or actively doing. It's that which precedes the thing that we identify as, kind of.
That which precedes experience.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Okay, yeah, just clear. Okay.
cool. So now that we covered
Is
that,
necessary for it.
so
So when he talks about the transcendental synthesis of the manifold representations in general,
that's just
he's talking
opposite.
about apperception again.
Okay. So in apperception, on the contrary, hence this.
Yeah,
So
he's
in apperception, we're conscious. I am conscious of myself,
not
not
as you appear to yourself, nor as you are in yourself, but only that you are.
Okay.
So neither as a thing in yourself, nor as an appearance to yourself, rather a simple bare fact of existence.
Yeah,
So
which
would
is
you say
interesting.
that when we do the thing like objectifying the subject, that's figurative?
No.
You're not even
No.
objectifying it, really. It's more just like
Yeah, well,
Figurative
it's kind of like
subjects are not subjects. Well, when the figurative understanding, it wouldn't be a subject; it would be an object.
well, that's
Right?
what I mean by
Okay,
objectifying, by saying I am, by saying I, or
Well,
like,
this isn't the figurative. This is the intellectual.
what's the difference between the intellectual and the figurative?
Double back.
double back.
Okay, so the synthesis of the manifold of sensible intuition, which is possible and necessary a priori, can be called figurative. This is that stuff like putting a triangle together. You can do
Yeah,
it a
I got it.
priori, right?
Picture.
And it is, yes, okay. And distinct from that would be thought in the mere category in regard to the manifold of intuition in general. That's apperception. And that's called combination of the understanding or synthesis intellectualis, or also, as far as I can tell, this is identical with apperception.
So
And that's what he's talking about here.
So like thinking words, concepts.
No, it's
your
the
mere
act of
awareness of
apperception.
you being.
Yeah.
I see. So that which the thing that is awareness and also
So the reason he draws
with
this distinction is
understanding.
because both of them are synthesis of the manifold of a priori like intuition, right?
Because the thing that we call synthesizes the
It combines
Is a
the
synthesis
sensibility and the
of,
understanding.
of all like intuition into one basically experience, right? And so that has the awareness of that you are. But at the same time, another kind of synthesis of a priori intuition is possible, namely the idea of putting the form of intuition together in such a way that you can do geometry, for instance.
Okay.
So they're not easy to confuse, except insofar as they are both a priori synthesis of intuition.
And is the apperception the synthesis of the is the intellectual transcendental?
Yes,
Both are
they're both
transcendental.
transcendental.
But
But the
one
synthesis
precedes the
which is
other.
intellectual.
Wait, but isn't figurative non-transcendental?
No,
No,
they're
both are transcendental.
because they're both required for experience. That's basically
So
all
for
transcendental
instance, if it were not possible for me, I think the argument is if it were not possible for me to have an a priori understanding of mathematical relations, it also wouldn't be possible for me to make sense of like the world perceptually.
I see.
that is definitely the argument.
And that's transcendental because it's like when I'm picturing a triangle, I don't necessarily have to understand that three angles make 180 degrees. I just somehow mathematically I see a triangle. The math.
So for let's give an example. You don't need to necessarily understand the laws of perspective, right?
To see.
But you perceive the laws of perspective.
I see. So you perceive the
capacity, at least, for that kind of geometrical understanding, which is the synthesis speciosa, or the figurative synthesis, needs to be present in order for you to have an experience, which is coherent. So that, in that sense, the figurative synthesis is still called transcendental.
I see. I understand.
Whereas the intellectual synthesis is more obvious, I think. You can't
That's
have
the
an experience
fundamental of
unless there's
everything. Yeah.
you to have an experience, right?
Yeah.
So yes, they're once you understand the two of them, they aren't easy to confuse, except insofar as they are both transcendental syntheses of intuition a
And
priori.
and also both like practically as well. They're very similar sounding, which is why I wanted to like go over this in the first place. There is a difference.
True, they are similar sounding, but
so when you're reading,
once you understand them
sure.
conceptually, they are very clearly different.
Yes. So let's just make sure we do understand and have that concepts in our heads when he says in general, which
yeah, by in general, he's again. I'm pretty sure he's just means apperception.
Yeah, because he literally
so it would be nicer if he
literally
just
says
apperception.
combination of the understand. Well, you know him; he's fucking weird with the words. But combination of the understanding is apperception as far as we understand it. So.
So whenever I hear the transcendental synthesis of the manifold of representations in general, I just go apperception.
In apperception.
So
apperception,
bad.
on the contrary.
That's so bad.
Yeah, Kant is bad.
Kant.
Sorry, but that's all part of the reason why we're doing this study. So.
Yeah.
So, in the transcendental synthesis of the manifold of representations in general, On the contrary, hence in the synthetic original unity of apperception,
Oh, he says it right
which is
here
the
too.
same thing.
Yeah, he
That's the
said
same
hence in
thing.
the yeah. So literally, he says it right here. It's the same thing, essentially, at
In
least
X,
logically.
hence in X,
Mhm.
I am conscious of myself not as I appear to myself, nor as I am in myself, but only that I am. Okay, I'm going to try to justify Kant here. Here's my hypothesis.
Mhm.
The synthetic original unity of apperception is what the transcendental synthesis of the manifold of representations in general is for us, but not necessarily. There could hypothetically be other beings for whom the transcendental synthesis of the manifold of the representations in general is not apperception,
I can see why
but
you would say
something
that
else.
for other things we've read. He has, I think, implied that. But is there anything like in here specifically that
That's
makes you
the
say that?
only that's the only way I can make sense of there being a distinction between
Oh, a
those two.
distinction. Oh,
Because, well, in order for him to say in X, hence in Y, X and Y need to be in some way distinct from each other.
not necessarily.
Well, no, but in order for it to be good writing,
Yeah.
because there's no reason to stick a tautology the size of two sentences.
Well, there is,
In
and the reason is if you're Immanuel Kant. I don't know. I think this like come on, you gotta admit that's possible.
He thought it was
that's
really.
one of the two is possible. Yes, it could be either. Anyway.
Regardless, for the sake of understanding this, these things are the same.
So, in other words, in apperception, I am conscious of myself not as I appear to myself, nor as I am in myself, but only that I am. This representation is a thinking, not an intuiting. Yeah.
Oh,
Now,
cool.
since
Okay.
we're since for the cognition of ourselves, in addition to the action of thinking that brings the manifold of every possible intuition to the unity of apperception, a determinate sort of intuition through which this manifold is given is also required. My own existence is not indeed appearance, let alone mere illusion, but the determination of my existence can only occur, we'll go to that later, can only occur in correspondence with the form of inner sense, according to the peculiar way in which the manifold that I combine is given in intuition. And I therefore have no cognition of myself as I am, but only as I appear to myself. Okay.
Do we want to read the
The
footnote?
consciousness.
Oh, sorry. Should we read the footnote or?
We can do that later.
Okay.
We'll come back to it.
Okay.
The consciousness of oneself is therefore far from being a cognition of oneself, regardless of all the categories that constitute the thinking of an object in general, through the combination of the manifold in an apperception. Sorry. Just as for the cognition of an object distinct from me, I also need an intuition in addition to the thinking of an object in general, in the category, through which I determine that general concept. Okay. For the cognition of myself, I also need, in addition to the consciousness, or in addition to that which I think myself, an intuition of the manifold in me, through which I determine this thought, and I exist as an intelligence that is merely conscious of its faculty for combination, but which, in regard to the manifold it is to combine, is subject to a limiting condition that it calls inner sense, which can make the combination intuitable only in accordance with temporal relations that lie entirely outside of the concepts of the understanding proper, and that therefore still cognize itself merely as it appears to itself with regard to an intuition, you already said that, Kant, which is not intellectual and capable of being given through the
Oh
understanding
my
itself.
gosh! It's an aesthetic again.
Shut the hell up, dude. Not as it would cognize itself, as if intuition were intellectual. Man has diarrhea in the mouth.
What?
Okay, so what I got out of this, not we're gonna go to the footnote, but so far what I've gotten out of this is that the self cannot be an illusion because it's not an appearance. It is just like kind of pure thinking, pure activity, I guess, to put it in more like
I
post-Kantian
think
terms.
therefore I am. kind of thing.
Right. Well, okay.
No, not really,
There's
because there's no
multiple
thinking.
parts to it.
Well, yes, there's
There's
thinking,
multiple
but
parts to it. Well,
yeah.
it is thinking. There is a
Yes.
certain degree of I think therefore I am, but only in a limited qualified
Yes,
sense.
yes.
Yeah.
That's what
That's
I
I
mean to
think
say.
probably why he doesn't reference it. So in apperception, which is an act of pure thinking, you are conscious that you are, right?
Yes.
Not as an appearance, not as an in itself, just a bare existence. Now,
Indeterminate.
this
Yeah.
bare existence is totally indeterminate. There is nothing you can say about it other than that it is. In order to determine it, just like for an object to be determined, you need some kind of intuition. You need an intuition to determine consciousness as well. So this section's actually kind of Hegelian
Yeah,
compared to
insert
other
ficta. I
ones.
was gonna say too, because to have the
Yeah.
I, you need
So
the not
you
I. So.
right. Well, yes. So you have a bare existence, and this bare existence needs to be determined in some way, right? Because otherwise, there's nothing you can say about it other than that it is. And so, in order to determine it, something needs to be given from outside, which is namely inner sense, right? I
Wait,
guess the paradox to an extent is how is it inner intuition and still given to us? That
Yeah,
makes sense as a paradox. That I understand
that's
as a
true.
paradox, but that's not what he
Okay.
explained in the last.
I
No,
That's
that
not
was
what.
just
like,
like, how does it work? It's
it's
like a
like
basic
if
Yeah,
function.
you
the question of how inner sense is inner and yet in intuition, I guess that is sort of paradoxical. Maybe that is what he was talking about, but it
is
didn't
it like
sound like it.
so
No.
he's saying it must be given, but how can a thing be given to you if you are it, or if it's inner? Because if it's inner,
Yeah.
it's like
So time is the form of inner intuition, right?
yeah.
But if it's inner, how can it be given and therefore passively
Well,
received rather than active? So it seems to be a little bit of there's some tension there, but I'm not sure that
It would
that's what
help
he
if
even
he.
meant when he said inner is the problem.
Yeah, it would help if
Because
he
when he said
fucking talked
inner,
about how intuitions are given. Like, it would help if he went into more detail about that. That's what I grew up my like grad.
but that the problem is
school
we can't
essay.
know that by
Well,
definition.
this assumes that wait. So for him, all intuitions
Yeah.
are passive.
Yes,
I find
by
that strange.
definition. That is what intuition is.
Yes.
Is there
Um,
something?
It's
Is
or
there
at least
anything?
that's how he
received.
defined it. And then he sort of contradicted his definition by talking about the possibility of an intellectual
Yeah.
intuition, which is active. But that's a contradiction in the terms he defined for himself.
Yeah, the post Kantians are eat all over this like
Yeah.
section. They're
I
always like,
guess
"This is how we know intuition is
how
bullshit."
how does? Well, oh yeah,
Well, that's
that's
what
interesting.
that's at least what they a lot of them took it as
Well,
anyway. Sorry.
even before that, how does he know that the thing is given and not just is? I think did we talk about this earlier?
Well, this is a big problem in Kantian scholarship in general, just like metaphysics, like post-Kantian metaphysics. Like,
Yeah.
Dr. Lee gave me a good just term to look up if you're interested in this, just not just for you, Harrison, but for anybody else watching this too or listening or whatever. It's called the concept is called the myth of the given, and it basically talks about like our intuitions or ficta, the not I, whatever terminology you want to put it in, is whatever that is truly given to us, or is it somehow like either like spontaneously uh, created like
Active.
concepts are, or is it an otherwise active
Yeah.
process?
Yeah. I think.
This is a huge
Yeah.
debate in metaphysics, like post Kant. So this
Yeah.
isn't like
I
some
think.
clear answer that you're gonna get. You know,
Yeah.
this is like a big
Yeah.
thing to get
Yeah.
research and get interested in.
Yeah. It reminds me because I think I had a very similar question. I think in one of the first Kant studies I went to.
Yeah,
We talked about
and it's
this.
a good question for sure. It's one of the first questions I had too when I started getting into Kant, and I wrote a lot of my grad school essay about it. I was comparing like the answers that Schopenhauer and Hegel give, but actually, if you guys have seen our Hegel study on this channel, and Harrison, you were there for this. It's interesting. This Hegel comes in with his, at least he previews his take on it because he says, right, consciousness produces representations, which I think it probably gives us anyway. I think it anyway gives that answer to his take on this debate, that he also recognizes that it can never true. Well, I mean, even just knowing Hegel too, like nothing is truly ever passive in Hegel. Like things are
Yeah.
always active, always, moving
It's like
and interacting with subjectivity and out into objectivity. So Hegel definitely doesn't think anything's passive. And as to whether like it's created or it's like given. Hegel seems to imply in at least in the encyclopedia bit that we read on Hegel study on the channel earlier, that he thinks consciousness somehow produces these representations. So a lot of post-Kantians generally have grievances with the concept of givenness. And if anyone is interested in looking more into it, you can look up the myth of the given, or just like givenness and in post-Kantian thought, and German idealism, all these other schools of thought, they have takes on it. So it's a huge problem. Is the point? And there isn't one clear answer, but there are lots of answers, and you can dialectically sift through them and see what's up with that. So, but I don't want to get too much more into that now. That's a lot of stuff to get into. But anyway, was there a question or concept that I can return to that or go on to?
Okay.
Oh, time, right? That's what we're talking about. Yeah. So it does seem like a bit of a paradox, at least in exclusively Kantian terms, right? How time can be inner, yet given, because what is given is supposed to be like outside of the subject, so to speak. So because it's passive and the subject is active through the understanding. So yeah, and only outer things are supposed to be given is the kind of the implication from the transcendental aesthetic. So that's weird. We'll see if he talks about it more. Or maybe he did talk about it earlier and we didn't understand, but we can go back maybe another time and look at that. But okay. Should we read this footnote?
Yes, we should.
Okay. Does anyone want to read it?
Sure.
Thanks, Harrison.
The I think expresses the act of determining my existence. The existence is thereby already given, but the way in which I am to determine it, i.e., the manifold that I am to posit in myself as belonging to it, is not yet thereby given. For that self-intuition is required,
Whoa.
which
sorry,
is required.
Self-intuition, weird. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
So it is required, which is grounded in an a priori given form, i.e., time which is sensible and belongs to the receptivity of the determinable. Now, I do not have yet another self-intuition, which would give the determining in me of the spontaneity of which alone I am conscious, even before the act of determination, and the same way as time gives that which is to be determined. Thus, I cannot determine my existence as that of a self-active being. Rather, I merely represent the spontaneity of my thought, i.e., of the determining, and my existence always remains only sensibly determinable, i.e., determinable as the existence of an appearance. Yet this spontaneity is the reason I call myself an intelligence.
Okay, so we have something called self-intuition.
Yeah.
What is that?
Okay. I think
the existence is thereby given, but the way in which I determine it, the manifold belonging to it, is not thereby given. For that self-intuition, which is grounded in a priori given form, i.e., time. Yeah, it's time. It's the inner sense.
Oh,
self-intuition
is inner sense. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, he's just repeating himself. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that was.
Yeah.
Why is
Yep.
determination
He's
bold?
repeating
What does he mean? What does he mean by determining? What does you mean? Just like acknowledging?
Determine, as in to
like determine
like
a notion, like to give it qualities, basically. Like
to recognize it, to look at and be like, that's
a thing. Yes, like this is a thing
that's
that
the
has
thing.
like
Okay,
qualities.
that's
in
and
Hegelian terms to negate it.
Yes. But if you don't want to get into that, you can basically just say, yeah, like whatever that process of which Hegel would define as negativity, but generally speaking, the process of giving it like an identity, basically.
Yeah. So kind of like I guess objectifying wouldn't be the word, but just like pointing at it and just being like, aha.
Yeah, being able to identify it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like giving it an identity.
That is a thing that is separate from me. That's an individual thing.
Well, not even necessarily. If you want to give it the most broad definition.
Because you are also determined, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it doesn't need to be separate from you. It just needs to be
separate from me. Well,
it just needs to be identifiable.
To make predicable. How about that?
Yeah, predicable, identifiable. I think these are interchangeable in the way we're using them, at least.
To identify. So then I guess what's the difference between identifying and objectifying?
I think the term predicable is probably the most precise I can get. So,
What's predicable?
meaning that you can have a predicate for it. Being, according to Kant, is not a predicate. To say X is not to
And for
well,
Hegel, pure
there's
being is not
there's
a
no
predicate
subject.
either.
Right, there's a subject, X, but where's the predicate? Right, literally in grammatical terms, you're not saying anything about X except simply that it is. So
I
it's not a
see.
predicate. But to say X is red, you've determined it now. You've predicated it. To
Oh,
give
Give
it
it
any
an
state.
identity.
So to actually say anything about a thing,
Yes.
Correct.
Other than that, it just exists.
other than it exists.
And
To
this
say-
goes,
Correct.
this goes into
apply any-
Hegel's like logic of how pure being is just
So-
basically nothing because it's.
So
it's not
any
determined.
saying anything about saying anything about a thing other than being.
Other than pure
Yes.
being, yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Of course, you don't need it to actually say anything for it to be determined, but metaphorically,
Yeah.
But you don't need it. Oh,
you don't need to literally say anything for it to be determined. Whether I say
you
X
don't
is
have to
red or
literally say
not.
anything. Like I can look at a thing, I can just like see or just
Right.
Cognize it,
experience that
basically, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
predicable.
cognize it.
That's why I
Yes.
said not predicated, but predicable.
Okay, got it.
Cool. Okay. Which would give me the spontaneity, which alone. Wait, I do not yet have another term. I cannot determine my existence. Self-active. So so basically he's saying to get where Descartes gets us, we would need some sort of other inner sense that we don't have that is like in addition to time.
What?
Huh?
I'm
I
trying to
guess
understand the rest of this footnote. So I'm saying, so he says, I
Doesn't
cannot
that just-
determine my existence as a self-active being. Rather, I merely represent the
He's just
spontaneity.
saying what he already said, that there's no determination that comes from self-active, i.e. cognition,
Oh,
or
so it's
this
all just repetition.
hypothetical.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just repetition.
Oh.
He's just repeating himself.
So it's a stupid footnote. Okay.
Yes.
Damn, he brought in new like words, and I thought it was new like content. My mistake.
Wait, so then outside of Kant, in post
That's a rookie mistake. That's a classic rookie Kantian mistake, thinking that him saying something is him saying something.
Yeah, damn. I'm 260 pages. Well, we didn't read all of it, but I'm on B158, and my ass still has not learned. Damn. My grad school's gonna see this, and they're gonna be like, "Not good."
It's just diarrhea in the mouth. That's all it comes down to. Or of the hand, I guess.
Okay. Oh, and we've covered all this already. Okay. So, okay. Oh, that's the end of the section. What the fuck? What the? I just got edged. I thought he was actually gonna say. So this whole thing is basically just, if you are, then you're like okay. So all we get out of all we get out of apperception is indeterminate being, like.
And you need intuition to further determine it. That is the summary.
Okay.
I see.
That's section 25. All right.
So just probably should have put this in the beginning, but section 25, simple summary. Apperception just tells you that you are. To say anything else about you, you need intuition.
I would say that's helpful. More than not. So
yeah.
It's just the way it's written.
Well, yeah, it's just overly verbose.
Yeah. So classic Kant, but at least we learned something. I would say that's much better than section 24.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Kantian advice for the day. Don't forget to determine yourself through intuition. Don't leave yourself as an indeterminate I exist, because that basically means nothing. Which
pro tip.
Yeah.
Pro tip.
Pro tip: determine yourself. With
Well,
intuition.
you actually can't determine yourself. You have to be determined.
Oh, I forgot.
No.
We're still lame and at Kant. We're not even at the post-Fichtean like self-determination. Fuck.
Yeah.
Because it's like because
Fuck you. I is posited by something else.
I actually based. I agree with this. Fuck Fichte. Okay. Not with this, but with that general sentiment of I can't posit itself entirely. Hegel.
So yeah.
So don't forget to get determined.
You've been posited.
Fuck you, unposits your eye.
no.
Yeah, that's the Kantian advice. Get determined, yo.
Determination for all you Undertale fans out there.
Dun, dun,
I
dun,
don't get it.
dun,
I'm
dun, dun,
uncultured, so.
dun, 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 no, 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 no,
Okay,
no,
35
no.
minutes, not too bad. We'll see you. We'll see you. Oh wait, let me go to the. Let's preview the next section. For, transcendental deduction of the universally possible use of the pure concepts of the understanding in experience. So it looks like we're getting more deduction, and it looks like we're nearing the end of it. So, yeah,
Can't get enough of that deduction.
we have 2 more numbered sections, and then just one brief concept, and we're done. So nearing the end. Next up is section 26, which is another wordy one: transcendental deduction of the universally possible use of the pure concepts of the understanding in experience. Which it seems like we've covered like literally this before, like a few times, but maybe there will be something new. Who knows? But it
You
seems
never
like
know
it
what
seems
you
like we're
better
getting
go.
more aesthetic regurgitation. So, oh god. All right, we'll see how it is. We'll see you there. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you for section 26 in the transcendental deduction of the comprehensive study of Kant's critique of pure reason. Woohoo!
Seeing how comprehensive yet informal this study is fills you with determination.
Oh,
Yo.
fuck you! Fuck this fuck up. Goodbye.